My name is Kayla Monroe. I'm 27 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the woman who treated me like a servant for 5 years, and then pretended she didn't even know my name. I'm standing in the front hallway of a house I used to clean from top to bottom every Saturday, every Tuesday, every time someone was dropping by. The same hallway where I once knelt with a toothbrush to scrub out mud stains after Deborah's son, Nathan, tracked dirt inside from soccer practice. Only now, the keys are in my hand. My name is on the deed. The silence echoes differently when the house is yours. I run my fingers along the doorframe, worn down slightly from years of opening and slamming and people walking through, like I didn't exist. But I remember every creak, every moment. I stood here, trying to be invisible so I wouldn't get in trouble for existing too loudly. It all started when I was 13. My mom died suddenly, a stroke in the middle of her night shift at the hospital. Aunt Deborah came to the funeral, in a black hat like she was someone important. She hugged me, told me she'd take me in and raise me like her own. I didn't have anyone else, so when she pulled me into her arms and said I had a home now, I believed her. I wanted to. But within the first week, I knew the truth. I wasn't family. I was help. The first time I reached for a chair at the dining table, she stopped me. "That's for family," she said, handing me a plate to eat in the kitchen. I stared at the empty chair next to Nathan and tried not to cry. The first time I had to clean the pool before school. I missed a math test. Deborah said it was my fault for not managing my time better. When I asked if I could invite a friend over for my 15th birthday, she actually laughed. "You're not a guest, Kayla. You live here, remember?" I remembered. Every day, every chore, every favor that wasn't optional. They called it generosity. I called it survival. I was their charity case, just lucky to be under a roof. But I didn't survive it. Not really. I turned the front door lock slowly now. The sound clicks into place like a finish line being crossed. Not until I made that house mine. Before everything fell apart, my life was small, but it was full. My mom and I lived in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, with thin walls and a heater that rattled all winter. But it was ours. We shared everything: stories, cheap pizza on Fridays, hand-me-down clothes that she patched up like new. She worked 2 jobs, nights at the hospital and weekends at a diner, but still made every birthday feel like a fairy tale. Streamers taped to the ceiling, a cupcake tower balanced on a thrift store cake stand, dollar store candles burning crooked but bright. We didn't have much, but I never felt like I was missing anything until I lost her. Cancer came fast. Stage 4 before we even had a diagnosis. 1 month. We were planning her next paycheck. The next, I was watching her body shrink beneath hospital sheets. My dad had disappeared when I was 3, and there was no one left except Aunt Deborah, my mother's older sister, who had always lived on the other side of the family tree. She showed up at the hospital in a crisp blazer and expensive perfume, said she would take care of things, and she did. At the funeral, everyone clapped her on the back and said she was a saint for taking me in. Stepping up, they called it. What a generous woman. I felt guilty for not crying tears of gratitude. At first, I thought maybe I had lucked out. Deborah lived in a massive house in a fancy suburb, 3 stories, marble countertops, a pool in the backyard. She drove a silver Lexus and wore pearls to PTA meetings. Her daughter, Brooke, was my age, tall, blonde, graceful in a way that didn't have to try. She was on the dance team, always surrounded by friends. Her younger brother, Zach, had the face of an angel and the smirk of a devil. Everyone thought he was cute. He wasn't. He was sharp in quiet ways, moving my backpack so I'd miss the bus, accidentally spilling soda on the dress I planned to wear to school pictures. Subtle things that no one ever noticed. But I noticed. My room was in the attic. Slanted ceilings, one tiny window, no insulation in the winter. Brooke had a walk-in closet bigger than my entire space. I asked once why I couldn't have a room on the second floor. Deborah told me the attic had character. I learned quickly not to ask again. I wasn't allowed to go on family vacations. While they posted pictures from Aruba or Aspen, I stayed behind to watch the house, water the plants, make sure the laundry didn't pile up. I wasn't allowed to join after-school programs because someone needed to be home to start dinner. When I once tried out for the school play without permission, Deborah grounded me for a week for dishonesty. I did everything they asked. Scrubbed the bathrooms, walked the dog, polished the silverware before dinner parties. Brooke called me Cinderella once. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. What else could I do? They fed me, housed me, and thought that was love. I didn't tell anyone. Not the school counselor. Not my best friend. I stopped trying to explain the silences, the curfews, the chores that filled every hour of my weekend. I became quiet, careful, obedient. I shrunk myself into someone they could ignore. Just enough to not be sent away, but not enough to be seen. Now, I'm 27 and I'm still learning how to be seen. I work a 9-to-5 at a property management company. Nothing glamorous, but steady. I take night classes in real estate. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment that leaks when it rains, but it's mine. I still deal with the voice in my head that whispers I'm not good enough, that I don't belong in rooms where people wear suits and talk numbers, that I'm still the attic girl, meant to be useful but never remembered. But I'm also not that girl anymore. There's a fire in me now, low and steady. I've been studying, learning, watching the market, waiting, because Aunt Deborah's perfect suburban palace, the one with the marble countertops and the pool and the staircase I wasn't allowed to walk down. During dinner parties, that house went into foreclosure. Bad investments, a second mortgage, quiet desperation behind those expensive curtains. And when it finally hit the auction block, I was ready. It was my senior year of high school when I finally stopped pretending things would ever change. I was juggling school and a part-time job at the grocery store, sometimes babysitting on weekends. Anything to scrape together a little bit of money, not for parties or clothes, for a savings account I kept secret in my notebook, behind a photo of my mom. But Deborah found out and made me hand over everything I earned. "You live here," she said, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "That money goes toward household expenses." Brooke didn't work. She got a monthly allowance, drove a brand new car to school, and was flown out to tour private colleges before she even sent in her applications. I got into college on a scholarship, not full ride, but close, and needed someone to co-sign a small loan. I rehearsed how to ask Deborah a dozen times before I stood in the kitchen and said the words out loud. She didn't hesitate. "We've done enough for you," she said, folding a dish towel like it was the end of a conversation. "It's time you learned about the real world." I slept on my best friend's couch for 2 months after graduation, got a job at a diner, and eventually found a room to rent. I didn't go to that college. Not then. I watched Brooke post dorm selfies and sorority mixers while I wiped down booths and counted tips. I told myself it was fine, that one day I'd find my way back, that I didn't need their approval or their help. But the night everything broke was at Brooke's engagement party. The backyard was lit with string lights and filled with catered hors d'oeuvres, and a string quartet playing a cover of something pop and expensive. Deborah had called earlier that week, said they were short on help and asked if I could lend a hand. I didn't know why I said yes. Maybe some stupid hope that things would be different now that we were adults. I wore black slacks and a button-down shirt, thinking I'd maybe help set up. Instead, I was handed a tray of champagne flutes and told to park cars. I overheard guests whisper about the local girl doing valet. One older woman asked if I was the help. Before I could answer, Brooke smiled and said, "She just lives here. My aunt took her in after her mom passed." And then Deborah, standing not 5 feet away, looked confused for a beat and said, "Her name's Kylie, right?" Kylie. She didn't even know my name. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not broke. Broke had happened a long time ago. This was different. This was clarity. I handed the tray to the nearest guest, walked out the back gate, and never looked back. No goodbye. No thank you. Just cold air and a silent vow echoing in my chest with every step. If I ever get the chance to take something back from them, I won't hesitate. In the years after I left that house, I built a life out of scraps. I worked double shifts, reception during the day, waitressing at night, and lived cheap, sharing a run-down apartment with 2 other girls and a leaky roof. I cooked bulk meals, took the bus, taught myself to stretch $20 like it was $200. Every spare moment I wasn't working, I studied. Real estate classes at the community college turned into late-night exam prep and early morning licensing tests. I passed. Barely slept the week I took the state exam, but I passed. I started small, buying distressed trailers, short sales, homes with mold or broken plumbing that scared most buyers away. I taught myself how to patch drywall, how to negotiate with contractors, how to spot which neighborhoods were about to flip. My first big win was a 2-bedroom foreclosure I bought for $35,000. I painted it myself, listed it, and flipped it in 6 weeks. Walked away with $50,000 in pure profit. I stared at that check for a long time, not because of the number, but because no one could take it from me. From that moment on, I was relentless. I poured everything back into my work. New properties, better tools, bigger risks. I stopped asking anyone for anything. I didn't care about brand names or vacations or fancy cars. What I wanted was freedom. I wanted the kind of wealth that meant no one could ever make me beg again. I went to therapy too, talked through the silence and shame I had swallowed for years. But I won't lie. The anger helped. The fury of being forgotten, used, ignored. It kept me focused when I wanted to quit. It kept me awake through nights of zoning regulations and crumbling floorboards. It pushed me when nothing else did. Then, one afternoon, while running errands across town, I found myself on a familiar street. Muscle memory made me turn left. My chest tightened as I drove past the house. Deborah's house. It looked smaller than I remembered. The lawn was overgrown, one shutter missing, and then I saw it. A taped notice on the front door. I pulled over. It was a foreclosure notice. Final warning. A thick red stamp at the bottom. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the door I once scrubbed every weekend through the grapevine. An old classmate still connected to Brooke. I heard what happened. Deborah's husband had racked up massive gambling debts. The savings were drained. He left. Deborah tried to keep up appearances, but it didn't last. The house went under. The bank took control. I started checking the listings every day. Quietly, obsessively. I watched and waited. No offers. No interest. Just a house sitting on a ticking clock. I tried to pretend I wasn't interested. Told myself it was better to focus on real deals. But the truth buzzed just beneath the surface. Could I do it? Should I? Was this revenge? Or was it healing? I thought of the winter I had the flu. Fever of 103. Couldn't stand upright. Still, Deborah made me shovel the walkway before her bridge. Club arrived. I thought of Zach laughing as he told a friend I was a freeloader with a sob story. I thought of the times I cried alone in that attic room, listening to them laugh downstairs over takeout I wasn't invited to share. I didn't want the house because it was theirs. I wanted it because it had been mine in every way but legally. I had bled in that house. Starved for affection, burned with shame. If I could claim it now, not out of spite, but to rewrite the story, didn't I deserve that? So I did it. I entered the auction anonymously, put down the deposit with steady hands. Only a few bidders showed up. It was a weekday, middle of the morning. No one expecting much value from an aging property in need of repairs. But I knew that house better than anyone. I knew what it needed, what it could be. The numbers made sense. The timing was perfect. I placed my bid, and in under 10 minutes, it was mine. The house I was never allowed to call home now had my name on the deed. The first time I stepped back into that house, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like a funeral. I brought a contractor with me, clipboard in hand, taking measurements, mumbling about water damage and outdated wiring. But I barely heard him. I was too busy walking through ghosts. The once pristine tile was chipped now, the grand chandelier flickering, the wallpaper peeling at the edges. The house looked tired, hollow, like it had finally run out of lies to tell. I walked slowly through the hallway where I used to scrub the floor on my knees, past the kitchen where I was never allowed to eat dinner with the family, and up the stairs I wasn't allowed to use when company was over. I opened the attic door last. My old room, still small, still dusty, still filled with old cardboard boxes no one had cared enough to move. The air was heavy with mildew and memory. I stood there for a long time, just breathing, and then I took out my phone and filmed a slow, quiet video. I walked through every room, capturing the cracks, the stains, the silence. I posted it that night with a single caption. This is the house where I was treated like furniture. Guess who owns it now? I didn't expect it to blow up, but it did. Thousands of comments poured in. Strangers told me they lived my story. Others offered business advice, shared it across platforms, stitched their own reactions. Some cried, some cheered, some just said, "This is what healing looks like." I thought that would be the end of it. A viral moment, a digital exhale. 2 weeks later, I heard a knock at the front door. I thought it was a delivery. Instead, it was Deborah. She looked smaller, hair thinner, makeup trying too hard to cover the cracks. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize. She just said her daughter, Brooke, was getting married. The venue they'd booked had canceled. Everything else was too expensive, too late. She asked if they could use the house. It would mean so much, she said. It's still home to her. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I reached into the folder I'd already prepared and handed her a flyer. Event rentals start at $10,000. It read, full payment due upfront. No exceptions. Her face fell, like she expected a hug instead of a bill. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. She left without a word. Later that week, Brooke messaged me, said we were kids back then, said she didn't know better, that Deborah was doing her best, that maybe this wasn't fair. I stared at the message for a long time before I typed my reply. Your best nearly broke me. This is me doing mine. She didn't respond. I gutted the house room by room, stripped it of every memory I didn't want to carry anymore. The dining room became an open-concept gallery. The living room, a bridal suite. The kitchen, sleek and modern with gold fixtures. But the attic, I left that for myself. I turned it into a private studio, quiet, peaceful, mine. I framed a photo of my mom above the desk, next to a snapshot of the tiny apartment we once called home. On the shelf, I placed the notebook where I used to hide my secret savings. The one that got me out, now, when clients walk through the house and ask how long I've owned it, I smile and say, longer than you think. The house doesn't haunt me anymore. It doesn't whisper old wounds or trap me in memories. It breathes now, with music, with laughter, with purpose. After the renovations, I made a choice. This place would no longer be a monument to pain. It would be something more. I started renting it to nonprofits at a discounted rate. Local women's shelters, community organizers, youth arts programs. I hosted fundraisers and book launches, even a healing retreat for women who'd aged out of foster care. The same walls that once made me feel invisible now hold space for people finding their voices. I didn't just flip a house. I flipped its story one afternoon, after a weekend event for a local domestic violence shelter. I was locking up when one of the teen volunteers stayed behind to help sweep. She looked around, wide-eyed, taking in the chandeliers and polished floors. Do you live here? She asked, broom in hand, soft curiosity in her voice. I smiled and shook my head. No, I said. I own here. Her eyes lit up. I could tell she wasn't asking about rooms or closets. She was asking if someone like her could belong somewhere like this. And I wanted her to know. Absolutely. Yes. I started writing down my story. Not just the pain but the rebuilding. The way I learned to listen to myself again. How I learned that being tough and being healed aren't the same thing. But they can live together. A small indie publisher picked it up, and it caught fire online. Suddenly, I was getting emails to speak at schools, women's conferences, real estate panels. People wanted to hear about the girl who came from nothing and bought the house that broke her and made it beautiful. But the thing I'm proudest of, the tutoring center. I went back to my childhood neighborhood, the corner where the old laundromat used to be, and I bought the empty lot. I built a bright, 2-story brick building with free after-school programs, college prep classes, and quiet study spaces. I named it Marcy House, after my mom. Every time I walk through those halls and see a kid sitting in front of a whiteboard, surrounded by people who believe in them, I feel a part of myself heal all over again. I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I don't flinch when someone says my name. I am no longer the attic girl, the forgotten niece, the invisible help. I am the woman who turns silence into legacy, Who builds something permanent out of pain? And I did it not in spite of where I came from, but because I knew exactly what it felt like to have nothing. Now, I make sure no one who walks through my doors feels that way again. The sun spills through the stained glass windows, casting warm, fractured light across the polished floors of the event space. The house is quiet now, empty after the weekend's gathering, a writing workshop for young women starting over. Kayla walks slowly through the open space, fingertips brushing the cool surface of the new marble countertops she once dreamed about, but never dared to ask for. The house hums with a different energy now. Not judgment, not silence, but calm. She climbs the stairs, past the bridal suite, past the office she built from scratch, and opens the door to the attic. Her old prison, now a sanctuary. The low ceilings are softened with warm lights and bookshelves that curve with the roof. A reading loft, just for her. A space of peace. By the door, a brass plaque catches the light. For the girls they made. Invisible. She makes a cup of tea, settles into the armchair by the window, and opens her journal. The final pages nearly filled now. She writes slowly, deliberately, letting each word settle into place like stone. They said I should be grateful, that I owed them everything. But I don't owe them anything, because I paid for this house in full, and I never charged them interest for what they took from me. She closes the journal gently, runs her hand over the cover like it's the spine of her past, and exhales. No bitterness, just peace. The house no longer owns her story, she owns it. Every room, every memory, every painful inch repurposed into something better. She takes one last sip of tea and sets the mug down. Then, in the quiet, she says it. Aloud, soft but fierce, like a truth that never needed their permission. I was never just the maid. I was the blueprint.